In my opinion, personally, as somebody who's played a lot of very story-driven games, 6, I think, is my favorite video game story of all time.
Whoa, that is high praise.
So, Paige, you're really into Final Fantasy. I think that's where we were.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Shine Get podcast. I'm your host, Murph, as always with my good friend, Cal.
Hey, Murph. We're back again here on the Shine Get podcast, which I still call the Level Up podcast every day. It's great to be here. Bold New Horizons. We renamed the podcast. We talked about all my GameCubes, and we're finally, at long last, doing something that has actually been quite requested. We have our first ever guest. Today, we are joined by friend of the show, fan of the show, I hope, avid video game collector in her own right, Paige Smith. Paige, welcome to the show. Would you care to introduce yourself to all of the game-obsessed freaks at home?
Hello, I am Paige Smith. I am a, these two have not mentioned it yet. This is obviously the Final Fantasy episode. I am a huge Final Fantasy
Cal, the whole point of me throwing it to you was so then you can say, wow, this is Paige. She's really cool and likes Final Fantasy. That's the bare minimum of what we needed.
I don't think of this as the Final Fantasy episode. I think of this as the Paige episode.
This is the Paige episode where she gets to talk about whatever she wants.
Which just happens to be Final Fantasy.
Exactly. There we go.
So, Paige, you're really into Final Fantasy. I think that's where we were.
Yeah, I've been a huge Final Fantasy fan for 20 plus years. Ever since this lovely game came out, Kingdom Hearts, back in, what was that, 2002? Got me super into it. I was huge on it. I would hang out on fan sites. I had my own awful GeoCities fan site back in the day. So I have been an avid Final Fantasy fan for all my life. It's my favorite video game series. And yeah.
Okay, quick question. What's GeoCities?
Did you say what's GeoCities?
Yeah.
Oh my god. Okay. Is this a bit? Or is this a serious question? So GeoCities was a thing back in the day. It was a resource by yahoo.com, which I'm sure there's a lot of people now who don't even know what Yahoo is.
Hey, Yahoo is still my front page whenever I open my internet browser.
Murph, what? All right, this is going to get cut from the episode. So
none of this is getting cut. We're putting all of this in.
I'm serious, though. I got internet access at like the age of 12. So
I did too.
Well, you're older than me. I'm the baby.
I think I'm significantly older than both of you. So everybody had their own GeoCities website. I had my own. I had multiples back in the day. I had stuff. You wouldn't believe some of the stuff. Would you believe me if I said that one of my little personal fan site projects that I had back in the day was for a little game called Bomberman 64: The Second Attack?
A whole website around that?
Yes. I was a diehard Bomberman 64: The Second Attack fan, and that's really funny because now it's one of the rarest games in the N64 library. I do own a copy.
That's crazy. Hey, I want to get Saturn Bomberman. I love me some Bomberman.
That is on my list. I would really like to get that one day, but it is a little prohibitively expensive these days.
Yeah. So, yeah, Final Fantasy, there's a bajillion games. There's 16 main games. There's so many spin-offs. Paige is right now just picking up games.
Every single game.
Exactly. And showing it to the camera.
All the mainline ones, except for 3. I don't have a standalone copy of that. But I have every other one, more or less. Box, even the big box Final Fantasy 11. I've got it all.
Okay, so I get to play the fun role on this episode of,
we're still going, by the way.
A great many gamers out there, I'm sure, are familiar with Final Fantasy, but maybe some aren't. I am kind of in that boat. I've been aware of Final Fantasy. I know there's a lot of them. And I have, as one does, I have played and beaten 7 once upon a time, like when I was in high school. And when I was a kid, I really dabbled like with, I think it was 1 through 3 on my Nintendo DS. No, it was on the Game Boy Advance.
Would have been on your DS probably.
Okay. On my DS. And I remember just playing it a lot, and I basically don't remember anything about the plot at all. I don't remember anything that happened. And then I've played like the first 6 hours of 10, and I've really have tried to play 15 over and over and over again. Hot Boys in Car.
That's 15.
That's 15. Okay. And so and there's so many games. There's 16 games, right? Mainline.
Yeah, I think the question that most people have when entering this franchise is like, there's so many games, there's so many that could be considered mainline, so many that's at the very least 16, possibly more. What is the best place to start? Like, how do I jump in? Because the Final Fantasy series is primarily a turn-based RPG series, but not always. There are games that deviate from that. So what games do deviate from that, and what games are kind of the best places to jump in, and why?
I definitely think it depends on your play style, personally. I think there's a couple great places to start, though. One is Final Fantasy VII. It's a classic for a reason. It's one of those games that everybody just talks about, and they talk about it for good reason. It really holds the test of time. It's a great place to jump in, and has a good story. There's some minor problems with it. The translation is very scuffed in parts, and you do have to get around some of like the blocky graphics look very weird by today's standards. But if you can get past that, it's a ton of fun. It's a blast, and there's a lot of great elements to it.
Yeah, the biggest problem that I always have with that is the pre-rendered backgrounds, and trying to figure out like, where am I supposed to go in the pre-rendered background?
So, there is a trick to that, actually. I don't know if you know this. If you press, at least in like, I don't know if you're playing it on newer versions, if you're playing the original copies or what, if you press, I believe, the select button.
It is select. I learned this like halfway through the game.
it brings up an arrow, or it brings up arrows at like the doors. And then obviously gives you like a little pointer to show where you are on the map, which is helpful in certain areas where you maybe aren't your character model isn't visible.
Yeah, this is one game that I find is like very beneficial to play on a CRT TV if you have access to that, because it really helps blend the pre-rendered backgrounds with the 3D character models a lot better. Because if you play like the newer remasters, re-releases of Final Fantasy VII, it's a lot more obvious. Hey, that's a pre-rendered background. That's a character model, and they look a lot more separate.
Yes,
and a lot less
they stand
cohesive.
out a lot more.
But the game is still good, right?
Yes,
like,
it is.
That's obviously
it is
a flaw.
An incredible game still. I have beaten it so many times now at this point. I actually platinumed it on my PlayStation. So I have played it extensively. But, at this point I've played so much, the experience is dampened for me a little bit. But I guarantee if you're playing it for the first time, it's still going to wow you. There's a lot to love. Great characters, great characterization. It hits all the marks. The materia system is deep. I think it's better than a lot of the like magic systems before and after for like leveling up. And I think it does an excellent job, and it's very beginner friendly.
It's intuitive, which
yes.
I can't say for every Final Fantasy system, which I appreciate.
You mean
about the
like
materia
this
system.
next one that I'm going to segue us into, Final Fantasy X?
I thought you were going to say 8, and I'm like, that is nope, not even close.
No, I have that on hand, but we're not talking about this game. I hate this game.
Wait, so can we all agree on our hate of 8s? Because I feel like there's this narrative that people are like, only true Final Fantasy fans love 8s, and I'm like, I just don't like this game. This game's not very good.
Really, from what I've seen online, it does seem very divisive.
I will say this: something that I frequently see with this game is that if this is your first Final Fantasy, you tend to have a lot stronger of an affection towards it, and you're willing to forgive its faults, which also makes it easier to experience. Which makes it easier to experience as a game, And then you can experience the ones later on that are frankly better.
Yeah, my problem with it is the junction system's a little complicated, and at least in the early game, it has very heavy use of summons to do a lot of damage.
What I hate the draw system. I despise the draw system. Why do I have to take a game action to just suck away my magic from my enemies and stuff like that? That's how you get your magic in Final Fantasy VIII. It is not a fun experience. I'm sorry. I think I got like 2 hours into it the first time I played it, and I was like, these core gameplay mechanics suck, and I never want to touch this game ever again. And I didn't for several years. I started forcing myself to try it again recently, in the wake of this is our like the one of reference, because I know we're all here. This is we've been having a Magic the Gathering Final Fantasy set. I'm a big Magic the Gathering fan, as these nerds obviously are.
Hey now, you're right. That's all I have to say.
I don't like that game.
So, I have been doing I do a lot of Magic the Gathering content, and I've been producing a lot of articles, write-ups, discussion points, talking heavily about Final Fantasy, because obviously I'm as you can probably tell as I'm going through all of this, I'm a pretty big fan. So there's been a lot to talk about story-wise, lore-wise, things like that maybe other people aren't as knowledgeable on. So naturally, I'm trying to fill in my gaps, and by playing games like 8 that I never finished, and it is a slog to get through. I do not like the game still very much, but I still think there's good stuff to experience in it. I hear the story's weird, but it's still like worth experiencing kind of thing. It's kind of also how I feel about like 13. I hear 13 has a pretty good story to it. It's just that the whole rest of the game is so difficult to get into.
Yeah, I liked what you said about 8, where I think the perfect encapsulation of it for me is it just tends to waste your time a lot more than other Final Fantasy games. And that's the reason that I don't like it very much, but to each their own.
But
you had said 10.
Yes, let's talk about a good game. 10 is fantastic. I love this game. I think it's great. It is the first one in the PS2 era, so it looks a lot more modern. I think if you go back and play it today, it's clear that it looks more like a PS2 game. There's a lot of fuzziness to it. Some of the textures maybe aren't as ideal on like a modern setup or modern consoles, what have you. But it still looks great. It plays fantastic. The story is amazing. Like, of the Final Fantasies, it maybe has, I think, it's at least a top 3 story in the series, I think. It's very personal. It's a very romantic, or like very romance-oriented story, but still has that, we're out to save the world. The world is in danger. There's this ever-looming threat. We're trying to stop it and bring peace to everybody. And but the key point is this is where like the turn-based gaming kind of ends. And
that's what I was about to ask. Is this turn-based, or is it kind of the transition to the action RPG?
So it's not really the transition point yet. That'll be my next one. But I think this is like the crystallization of the turn-based system, where you don't have, because normally these Final Fantasy games, they have a little bar that loads up to kind of reach when it's your turn next. Instead,
the active time battle.
Yeah, the active time battle. And 10 just has a sidebar that shows who's next for like the next like 5 or 6 turns or something like that. And you can actually scroll down and like see like for the next like 20, 30 turns, what is the turn order like? And you can plan out your moves. You can, depending on the moves you make, sometimes you'll go, your turn order will go up, or you'll push your enemies down. And it's really fun. It's really engaging. The big hurdle, though, is the level system. The lovely sphere grid, which is really weird. And the first time you experience it, you'll be like, what the hell is going on here?
It's very, as a guy who's played only a couple hours of this game, the first time it pops up, it is very discombobulated.
It's very,
You're like, what is this?
Like decision paralysis, gargantuan.
but it's really,
Yeah, it's like, hey, you can zoom out, and then you zoom out, and you're like, oh no.
but then as you start going through it, it's actually very linear until you like get to like really deep in the late game. And at that point, even then, it's still pretty linear because you're just kind of going around the board. But for the most part, it's a lot more linear than it appears, but it feels very daunting. Like the first time or two, you really see it and you're like, what's going on? What do I need to do?
Because that's the unique part, right? Like, you don't actively gain level. Well, when you gain levels, it's not like normal levels. You don't get that experience, and that automatically translates into you are powered up. That translates into you get more movements and unlocks on the sphere grid.
Yes.
So if you completely ignore the sphere grid, you are never going to get any stronger.
And there are people who did that for speedruns, I believe.
That's crazy. Yeah, Final Fantasy X is the one that I am most recently familiar with, because this was my big hole, I felt, for Final Fantasy when the Magic set came out. As I was like, okay, I want to play 10. Like, I've heard so many good things about it. And I think the thing that really got me was I really liked how it managed all of your characters. Because so many times in these RPGs, you can be like, I'm going to pick these 3 characters. And these are my characters. I'm going to level them up. Everybody else gets completely ignored. Whereas in 10, you can, literally in the middle of battle, press L1 and R1, pick a different character, and they get swapped in, and it doesn't consume a turn. Meaning there's literally no downside to constantly switching between your characters and using the right ones for the job, which I really appreciate.
Now, once you get into the end game, you do usually end up falling into like 2 or 3 characters. It's only because some of the end game weapons and armor and everything is easier to unlock for certain characters than other ones. And you just
Oh my gosh. Can we talk about the end game grind for a sec? So I learned that in order to get somebody's weapon, you have to dodge a lightning bolt, a random lightning bolt, 200 times in a row.
I have never done it.
And if you mess up once, you have to start the whole thing over. So I tried doing this. I even went and found a setup online. I was like, there's got to be people that have setups for this. And there was. But it involves going to a rock, going to a pit, having the thing trigger, hit the button right when the lightning strike comes down, go back and do it all over again. But there still is an element of timing. It's not the most difficult element of timing, but there is that timing. And doing it 200 times in a row, it just gets mind-numbing.
And there can also be like a certain amount of lag. You're not sure if you maybe missed a count, if you got it right, if your number's correct.
Yeah, you literally have to count in your head. There's nothing on screen that tells you. You have to be like, all right, I'm going to count in my head how long this is going to go for. And it is miserable. It is the worst.
There's a couple other ones that I think are pretty bad too. The butterfly catch quest for Kimahri. The first part is pretty straightforward. It takes a little bit, but once you get it, it's pretty easy. Second part, though, is brutal. I don't think I've ever finished it, and I've tried it several times. And then there's the Chocobo race.
Oh, yeah, in the plains or whatever.
Plains. So I've looked up the patterns for this, and it turns out that there are like almost like no viable patterns. And even if you do run into an actual viable pattern, you still have to kind of do things pretty much perfectly. I did it once when I was younger, and I don't think I'm ever doing it ever again. It was miserable. And I think that was more just, that first time I was playing the game, I must have been like 13, 14 years old. And so I had a lot more like, perseverance, and I was very stubborn and just like, I don't have anything better to do with my time. I'm going to get this. Now I'm an adult. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to take Orin, Yuna, and Riku, and I'm going to call it a day here. Because their ultimate weapons, their celestial weapons, as they're called in this game, are extremely easy to unlock in the late game compared to the others.
Comparatively, yes.
Speaking of, I will say this guide is great. However, there is one critical thing that is worth mentioning. If you play this game and you look up, you got to be very careful with how you approach some of the guides out there, because one of the things you really need to use in the end game is this ability called Bribe to get special items off of enemies. The bribe numbers in a lot of these guides, particularly this one right here, are wrong. They're not accurate.
You had tipped me off to this beforehand because I also used that specific strategy guide that you're holding in your hand.
It's a very good guide, honestly, but that is like the one real problem with it is those numbers are like, I think it's like they're 10% under for some reason or something like that. I don't know why, but they are, so they're not correct. But if you go on like wikis and stuff, you can find like the accurate numbers.
So silly. All right, so 7's a good place to start. 10 is a good place to start. Any other places to start that you think are?
I got a couple of good ones.
All right, hit us.
12. This is an underdog. A lot of people do not like this game. I honestly don't know why. This was one that I played when it like first came out, and everybody was like talking, I don't like this game for whatever reason, and I fell in love with it. I love this game. But a big reason, I think, is that it started to move away from the turn-based gaming. It still has elements of it, but the goal of 12 was to be more of a offline MMO, because it was right around when like MMOs were blowing up. Obviously, the one right before this was 11, which was the Final Fantasy MMO, or the first one anyway. And I believe this one came out in 2005, 2006. So World of Warcraft had already been out for a year or so as well. So there was a lot of MMO hype at the time. And this was kind of the way that they were trying to come up with like an offline MMO. So it plays a little bit differently, and noticeably so. You only really take control of one character at a time. But you can kind of, still control the other members of your party. And you can mitigate that by using this thing called the Gambit system, which is kind of like programming. You're basically programming your characters to do specific things in specific situations. Like, let's say your character you have a party member that's at like 30% or less health. So then you have a Gambit set that says at 30% less health, you cast Curaga on a character. So you heal that character. Things like that. Or, attacking certain enemies at different points, things like that. The story is also very political. It's very dense. It's kind of very Star Wars-esque, just going to say, but that's a bit of a common theme with Final Fantasy, admittedly. So
Star Wars is fantasy, not sci-fi. So Final Fantasy following that is
rebels going after a tyrannical empire, and there are several Darth Vader analogs throughout the series.
A classic trope.
It's everywhere. In fact, it's so big of a thing with how the story plays out in a lot of these games that a recurring set of characters in the series is Biggs and Wedge.
From 7?
They're in 6, 7.
Oh.
They're in later games as well. Some of the Blitzballers you can get in 10 are Biggs and Wedge.
I didn't know that because I ignored Blitzball because I hate it.
Yeah, there are characters in several of the games named Biggs and Wedge.
Interesting. And I didn't know that. Kind of like a Sid, because I know there's Sid in all but the first game, I believe.
Yeah, but it's and even that got retroactively changed later on. In some of the remakes, re-releases, they added him in retroactively as like he's not an actual character, but he plays an element in like how like your airship got built and stuff like that. Like they fleshed it out a little more. And then that Sid character actually has a lot of story relevance to Dissidia as well. Dissidia is the Final Fantasy fighting game, for those unaware.
I had no clue there was a Final Fantasy fighting
There's
game.
multiple.
I should have known. I did,
because there's one on the PSP.
There was 2 on the PSP, I believe. Or there was one on PSP and one on Vita. Then they later released one, I think, on PS4 as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
Which is very cool.
I have that one digitally, but I do have the original Lucidia. I played that way back in the day. It's a lot of fun. I had no idea what I was doing, but it was great.
It is very goofy.
But yeah, 12. I think 12 is a fun place to start if you're kind of in that MMO sort of space. And if you're looking for that now, or if you're just looking for an MMO, can I interest you in the highly critically acclaimed Final Fantasy 14 online that you can play for free up to level
way higher now. I think it's way higher than the original copy pasta these days.
I didn't know that was a meme until the Magic set came out. People kept saying that. And I was like, why does everyone keep saying this?
With wonderful expansions, Heavensward and Stormblood being available for free as well now. Yeah. It is like it's a meme, it's a bit, but it's also true. You can play that game for free right now. Download it, try it out. It's honestly a pretty good time. A Realm Reborn, bit of a slog. I will say though, it is miles better than the original. I was a day one purchaser of that.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I bought the collector's edition for the original copy.
Final Fantasy XIV is one of those weird games where when it came out, it was like the worst thing ever. And credit to Square for just like constantly going back and reshaping this game basically from scratch in order to make it into the game that it is today, because now it is a critically acclaimed game that is like one of, if not the most popular MMOs on the market. But they stuck with it.
Yeah, it was really bad out of the gate. Like, it was getting like 4s. It was like one of the lowest reviewed games of the year. It is such a comeback story. The what I will say though is the way that they ended 1.0 before they did a Realm Reborn and all of the current versions of the game. The way they sent off the original version of Final Fantasy XIV is incredible. Look it up. It was you can find the cinematic on YouTube. It's called, I believe, End of an Era. And essentially what they did is they let anybody, if you ever had an account on Final Fantasy XIV, even if you weren't an active subscriber, you could come back online, use your login and log into your account, and they would throw you into this huge battlefield. That was just this giant PvP battle. And you've got this meteor, like this comet, like impending doom hanging overhead. And then after a period, and there's a countdown timer, like somewhere on the screen. And when that timer reached 0, it cut to black, play the cinematic. They blew up the world.
Whoa.
It is epic. It is still great. It's one of my favorite cinematics of all time for Final Fantasy. And they did it for like the worst version of this game. Like, that just shows you like the amount of care that they had. They knew they wanted to do it right the next time around. But I do have a few of my oddities from my collector's edition. This is a notebook that came with the game, which since we're also Magic nerds here, I will note this. I used to be a certified Magic the Gathering judge. I used this notebook, this Final Fantasy XIV notebook, for my judging.
That's so cool. Use it for your life totals.
Reason,
yeah. I also have this cool thing. I don't know if they still do honor this stuff anymore, but the collector's edition for 14 originally had a couple of cool things with it. The first one was, I believe it had some in-game stuff. And then obviously it had the little book that I showed off. It also had this like one-time code security, like keychain thing with it that you could use to like as like an extra security bit for your account. Basically, like two-factor before like modern two-factor apps came into in vogue. And it also had this really big box with special Yoshitaka Amano art on it. But one of the cool things that you could do with it is it had a voucher in it that you could redeem for an actual certification for your character in world.
Whoa.
That's so sick.
I have this. I think I've maybe shown this once on social media or something like years ago.
That's really cool.
Yeah, this is like one of my coolest things. Like, I really need to get this framed sometime. I've had it just sitting around for years now, but it is just cool as hell. It's from Limsa Limosa, which was one of the original like starting areas if you were, I think, Gladiator. Now it's the city of Ul'dah. But yeah, so this was like what I got before. It was really cool. Just some of the stuff that they offered with it. So even though I don't own like the actual thing with the Yoshitaka mono art on it and everything, I think I actually threw it away at one point back when I wasn't really like seriously collecting, just because the game was just so bad. But I kept the little knickknacks like that because I thought it was really cool.
That is. I very much agree. So those are the starting points that you would recommend. So 7, 10, 12, 14 if you like MMOs.
And I would also recommend the classic. Don't buy this version unless you're a diehard collector. Final Fantasy III, aka what's actually called Final Fantasy VI. Let's talk about this briefly because this is another little tidbit with all this deluge of games. In the United States, they only released originally Final Fantasy 1, 4, and 6. But because they didn't want to confuse anybody in the United States,
as Final Fantasy 1, 2,
1,
and 3.
2, and 3. So this is actually Final Fantasy 6. However, they released it in the US as Final Fantasy 3, which, yeah, they didn't want to confuse anybody, only to release Final Fantasy 7 a few years later. I think this was...
On 7, they just said, screw it. We're just going to do the global marketing like I'll say 7. It's fine.
Yeah, so you can find 6 in later copies. That was my only standalone copy of 6, I believe. I have a couple compilation versions of it sitting around here somewhere. These are... I had all my games put together, and then we started just bouncing around. So, but this is like one of like the key concept art pieces for 6 specifically. This is Final Fantasy Anthology. This is a re-release of 5 and 6. Basically, what they did is when 7 got huge, and they realized they had a huge hit on their hands, they wanted to go back and re-release a lot of the older ones. So they re-released 1 and 2. 2 had never come out stateside. 4 with another lovely game that we'll kind of talk about later once I pull out that compilation. And then they released 5 and 6. Again, 5 didn't come out in the States before. 3 was the outlier. 3 did not come to the States for several years later. In my opinion, it is not a good game. I think it's my least favorite in the series. But
So what does 6 do in that case? Because 6 is kind of like the last of the quote unquote classic Final Fantasy games. What does that do better than the previous 5 that came before?
So let me put it this way. 1, and I would say even like 3 to a certain extent, don't really have good stories. There's not really much there in terms of story. 3 has a better story than 1. It starts off a few things for the first time. It really uses like crystals as like the main focal point to the story, which then gets utilized later on. It's a minor thing in the first game, not really a thing in the second one. But it gets utilized very heavily in 3. But then when you get into it and like the villain isn't even really there. He's just kind of a background character who you just happen to meet at the very end, and he doesn't really actually show up before then. So it's kind of a shallow game. 2 has a much better story, I think, but it's still very basic. 4 is when you start to get into like a real story, and it still feels very Final Fantasy. Again, you're collecting the crystals. You're trying to save the crystals. 5 rehashes a lot of that stuff, but it does it in a more... like, it's not taking itself very seriously. I do actually recommend 5, as well as another one of those like starting points. I think it's a very good point. It's very different, though, and it almost has a little too much depth to the gameplay. that I would recommend kind of going back to it, but it's a very lighthearted adventure. It's very, very sweet and very easy to get into. I had a great time with 5. It was my first time playing it very recently, and I loved it. But 6 takes it in a whole different direction. It's always been about like crystals and everything for like the last 3 or 4 games leading up to this point. All gone. It's all out the window. It's a fresh, original story based on a rebel faction against an evil empire. Stop me if you've heard this one before.
Wait a second. I think I'm slowly kind of getting where the inspiration for this could be from. It is Lord of the Rings, right?
But it's very, very rich. I would say 4 has somewhat more fleshed out characters as well. A very static plot, party, whereas like in the previous, 1 is kind of like a make your own party of characters. They don't really have any individual personalities. 2, they do. But then 3, they go back to that make your own party kind of thing. Not very static characters. 4 and 5, they have like more static party members, but there's only like a couple of them. There's not very many. If I recall correctly, I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but I think this is right. 6 has 14 playable characters.
It does have a lot of playable characters, yeah.
The majority of them are extremely fleshed out, have great stories, and they all intertwine, and the story is just great. It is also a crystallization of the early gameplay. The soundtrack is phenomenal. It really feels like a cinematic masterpiece. In my opinion, personally, as somebody who's played Final Fantasy series, I've played numerous other video games over the years. I haven't really qualified this at all, but I will say that I own something in the realm of like 500 plus physical games plus several more digital. So I've played a lot of games, a lot of very story-driven games. 6, I think, is my favorite video game story of all time.
Whoa, that is high praise.
That's very high praise.
Final Fantasy 6. And again, it's one of those, I've played it so much that when the last time I went back and played it, it did diminish the experience a little bit. But once you get to the back half of the game, if you've never played it before, it is a wild experience. Because if you've never played the game, you'll be very surprised at what happens. It's very out of nowhere. It's a blast. So a very cool, a very unique experience, very rich characters, very rich story, gameplay is excellent. And it's a great launching point if you've never played a Final Fantasy game before. Obviously, then some of the later ones too, like 15, 16 are the newer ones. I have no experience with 16 personally. I've heard decent things about it. And 15, I think, is a decent game. It just feels very different. But if you like the more like modern day kind of open world sort of action games, it plays a lot more into that space where it's more of a, I would go so far as to say the actual gameplay of 15, like the combat, is a lot closer to Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So like when I first picked it up, I'm like, oh, this is just like Kingdom Hearts. So if you've played Kingdom Hearts and are looking to get into Final Fantasy, hey, maybe that's a place you can look into.
Yeah, because it's real time, but there's a few things that you have access to. You semi-control your buddies. You do like the warp strike in order to regain your magic, and you're just kind of like darting all around all over the place.
It's very hack and slash. And you have like
very unique
presets for your magic and your items and stuff like that. It's got a lot of similarities to Kingdom Hearts in its core combat elements.
I'll step in here and say about Final Fantasy 16 as a Final Fantasy 16 enjoyer. Time for me to shine, everybody. Hold on. I do legitimately like this game. It is a little bit more like Devil May Final Fantasy. It's a little Devil May Cry-y. Where you're caring more about like combo systems, juggling all of your spells because you don't really have like magic or anything. Everything just like refreshes. eventually. And so all those are on cooldown. You just have to decide when to use those abilities because they are going to take some time to refresh. But it's, a lot more about positioning in a real-time combat setting. The thing that I think Final Fantasy 16 does very, very well, aside from the combat, which I do like it, but I totally understand why somebody who likes more traditional Final Fantasy stuff would not like it. Final Fantasy 16 is very, very, very good at spectacle. Like, the spectacle in 16 is insane. Like, the fights are crazy, big, over the top. If you like spectacle in video games, which I very much do, I think that's kind of like an underplayed portion of video games, is that sometimes you just need a video game to make you go, oh, wow, this is crazy. And 16 does that very, very often.
And to be completely fair, a lot of that's kind of been the hallmark of Final Fantasy games to begin with. I mean, you look at them now in a lot of respects. Like, if you go back and play 7 and you fire up a summon, wow, it doesn't look as good nowadays in 2025, where it's, the game is closing in on, God, I hate to say this, it's closing in on 30 years old. I don't like to say that, but it does show its age a little bit, where it's not as exciting. But like, when I first played that game in 2002, 2003, so the game was only 5-6 years old, and realized we were already into like the PS2 era, it was still exciting. It was still epic. It looked awesome. The first time you fire up Final Fantasy X, where you're in that PS2 era, and you summon Valifor for the first time, the initial summon, or as they're called in that, Aeons. It's thrilling. It's exciting. It may not look as much of a spectacle now, where, again, the textures look kind of blurry and fuzzy, and they don't look as clean, but it still has this epicness to it. It looks great. There's a spectacle to it. And like games like 16 are just, obviously now you have PS5 era graphics. It's really amping up that spectacle tremendously, but it's always been a hallmark of the series, for sure.
Let me sell you on 16. You control the summons.
Yeah.
The summons are you. There you go. There's my pitch. It's awesome. It's really fun.
I am aware of this fact, is that all of the characters are the summons and everything. It's also very Game of Thrones-esque, I believe, as the story goes.
Yeah, it's a relatively linear progression. There's not a ton of like open stuff, not really like a big open world map that you go to or anything like that, which I prefer more directness in my games as well. So these are all things that kind of like appeal to me as a gamer, and that's why I very much like it. But I think it's a little underappreciated, but I do understand why people would kind of shy away from that, especially if you're trying to get into the series. Like, it's not a great representation of what the rest of the series is.
Yeah, and that linear aspect, it's kind of funny because the linear aspect was a big fault of 13. However,
it's not nearly as bad as 13 for what it's worth.
I will say though, for all that people complain about it with 13, you can't not mention that 10 is also very linear itself. It really is. It does it in such a way that it kind of, you forget that it's a linear game, because you're going on a journey. It's going on an experience. It's very slowly paced. It's well paced. There's a lot of little cutscene, little bits in it. But I played 13, and I tried it for a good couple of hours, and it is not good. The experience is very different. You're just running down like mechanical corridors. They all look the same. There's no real variety to them. You don't really run into like towns and everything. What always stood out to me was like in 10, right? You would go to the next town. Hey, there's your shop here. You buy your items, you buy your equipment, your gear, and that's how you help progress. Do you know how that shows up in 13? A little robot drone will show up that you walk up to, and it gives you a display where it vends out these items. It's so drab. It's so dull. There's no personality to it. And the battle system was just incredibly hard to get into. I struggled with it a lot. There's people who like it out there. More power to them. I am not one of those people. But it is, again, hey, I don't like 8, but I'm still willing to give it another shot. And just like that, I too will eventually give 13 another shot as well.
That is totally fair. So I think we've kind of covered most of the mainline series. Before we move on to like best ways to play them, just real quick, are there any spin-offs that you would like highly recommend, either early on in your journey?
Wait, I have
or
one.
very
I have
quickly?
one.
Yes,
Cal
Cal?
has one. It's Final Fantasy Tactics.
So here's a fun story. Most of these spin-offs, I actually have not played very many of them. Tactics is one that I have sort of played, but I've never gotten very far in it. It's weirdly one of my blind spots. But all I hear is great things about it, and I know that it's a game that I will love because while I haven't played too deep in like the tactical RPG space, I have, because I am a diehard Sega Genesis fan.
Yeah, more Sega fans. We need more Sega fans in this world.
I am
You're the best,
a
Paige.
tremendous fan of Shining Force and Shining Force 2. Which, as I understand it,
Love
if
that.
you love those games, you will love Final Fantasy Tactics.
It's better to say there's a lot of, Final Fantasy. I don't know exactly the full history of the, let's call them like grid-based strategy games genre. Obviously a sub-varietal of them are extremely popular now that Fire Emblem is like broken out into actually kind of crossover popularity outside of the genre heads. But Final Fantasy Tactics to me feels like a very foundational work in a lot of ways, as someone who's played a good amount of all of as many of them as I've been able to get into and play. And if you like any of those types of games, or heck, I mean, even if you just do not dislike turn-based gameplay in your video games, the story's awesome, the gameplay's awesome, it's a grand time. And that's the one bit of input I have on the quality of a Final Fantasy game for basically this entire episode.
So let me go a little further on this too, though. Final Fantasy Tactics has always been kind of a cult classic. It's never been like the top performing title in the series, because obviously people think 7. I want to play the next mainline one. 10, or one that for some reason hasn't come up in this whole discussion yet. 9. Which is also excellent.
Oh yeah, I forgot about 9. 9's good.
We haven't touched 9 yet. Let me just let me.
It's because we're Magic players and we don't want to talk about that.
Oh
So
no.
I will say, 9 is one of those ones. I love 9. It's a great game. My recommendation though is I think it's a good game. If you were like to pick it up as like your first game, it's great. It's excellent. You will love it. My recommendation, though, is play it once you've gotten to play through a couple other Final Fantasy games first, because it will give you a much deeper appreciation for what they're doing with 9, because 9 is basically a pure encapsulation of everything that represents the Final Fantasy series as a whole. I think it is the most it's like the most Final Fantasy. A lot of the story element. Remember how I was mentioning how Stranger of Paradise is a kind of like a riff or a remake in a way of 1? So is 9. 9 has Garland in it. 9 has the 4 elemental fiends from 1. 9 has all of these other elements.
Crystals are back.
The crystals are back. The a bunch of the main characters are all like are all of our favorite character. Vivi.
Boo! We hate Vivi. Boo!
Okay, but real, we're saying that in Magic terms because Vivi is broken in terms of Magic. It is way too powerful and way too strong. However, in terms of Final Fantasy IX, he's the most delightful character. We love our sweet existential crisis boy. But he's based off the original Black Mage design from Final Fantasy 1. Zidane kind of carries a lot of that thief look. Garnet, her when you first meet her, she's wearing a white mage robe, like she does, or like the white mages in Final Fantasy 1. So she is really looking just like, or a lot of these characters are looking directly to what those older games did. I believe what's her name? Freya also looks like the red mages from those early Final Fantasy games. So there's a lot of cues taken from those earlier titles that plays into 9. It's very much just, if there's something you liked about the older games, then it comes back in 9, basically. I think it is the best representation without kind of being like... Because I guess it depends on who you ask. 14 is kind of like the most Final Fantasy of Final Fantasies, but it's more like, hey, you remember that thing in Final Fantasy? We got it in here. It's the exact same thing. And so people conflate that with being like the most Final Fantasy, but it more feels like a wink and a nod. Whereas with 9, it's like, it's just part of what it is. It's part of its core identity, and it just really represents the series at its peak.
Yeah, I would say that I think because of that, I think that 9 is still a good starting point. Because, like, yes, you might have more appreciation for it if you play other games first and then get to it. But at the same time, you can also start with that and then start to play other games. You could be like, oh, I recognize that thing. Now my appreciation for 9 is greatened. It is heightened. But you have played.
Right. So. But going back to the original point, we digress. Final Fantasy Tactics.
Spinoffs.
It's more of a cult classic compared to a lot of the other games of its era, and it's gained a lot more appreciation as the years have gone on. We've got the internet, information has been shared over time, and its popularity has grown so much so it's getting a remaster, and arguably even like potentially, depending on how you look at it, a full-blown remake more or less. Coming out to modern consoles soon. I think sometime either later this year or early next year or something like that. I don't have the date in front of me, but it was recently announced. It's coming out relatively soon, and it's going to bring this great game to a whole new audience of players, and that's super exciting.
Mm-hmm. The spin-offs that I have experienced are basically, for whatever reason, I've done all the stuff that is Final Fantasy VII related. I don't even like Final Fantasy VII all that much. I mean, I'm not like in love with it. I do like Final Fantasy VII. Let me be clear about that. But I'm not like, that's the best game ever. That's the only one in the series that I like. But I've played Dirge of Cerberus for whatever reason. Don't play that game. It's not very good. And then Crisis Core, I do think is legitimately good. It's okay.
It's fine.
It's a solid 5 or 6 out of 10.
Yeah, that's about right.
PS2 game.
I will also mention the other Final Fantasy VII spinoff, Crisis Core, which is, again, it's a spinoff, but it's a prequel. But it did recently get a re-release for the PS4. It was originally a PSP game, and for a long time, you couldn't really get this. This was actually one of the more harder to access games in the series. Big reason for that, weirdly, even though many PSP games came to the digital market, Crisis Core did not.
It was only on UMD.
Yes,
yeah.
It was only a UMD game. So if you had a PSP Go or a PSP or a PS Vita, you could not play this game. It was just flat out impossible. So many people just didn't get to experience it before this. And by all accounts, I haven't actually played this copy yet, but as I understand it, it's pretty much just a revamped, updated version of the PSP game. And it looks...
Yeah, it's fully remade, I believe, in Unreal Engine. They swap out the entire voice cast as well. It's like fully ground up.
I didn't know that. I thought it was more of a remaster.
No, it's definitely more of a remake than a remaster. There's a lot of changes made to it. Some for the better, some for the worst. You can have your own opinion on that. I haven't played through the whole thing, but I tend to like the original voice cast a little bit better. That's just my personal opinion, but I think that the new game is a great, great way to experience the story, because I do think that this game has a very good story, and it is something that you should probably experience, but I would say play Final Fantasy VII first.
I agree with that.
Otherwise, this story makes no sense. I played this game before Final Fantasy VII, and then I played 7, and I'm like, when does Zack show up?
Yeah.
In the story. And I was sorely disappointed.
But,
no
but
spoilers,
it is worth playing, especially before you play. Now, granted, I have never actually finished Crisis Core, but I am familiar with the story just because I'm such a diehard fan that I am a nerd and look this stuff up. I also, before I get into this, have to shout out the classic, questionable Advent Children movie. Yeah, there's a Final Fantasy VII movie.
Advent Children.
Don't watch this version. It is awful, watch the complete version. Find Final Fantasy VII Advent Children complete. I think it does a lot more for the story. A lot of characters get a little more backstory. It plays a little bit better. It's short. It's sweet. It's a good little quick watch. There's also Final Fantasy Spirits Within, but that's a whole other bag of ball wax. And it's, in my opinion, an acquired taste. I like that movie, actually, but a lot of people hate it.
I'm the same way with Advent Children, where I'm like, I definitely have a soft spot for it. I bought it on 4K Blu-ray, the complete version.
The complete version's good, I think. I really like it.
It doesn't work very well as a standalone film. Like, you need to have played Final Fantasy VII in order for any sort of emotional resonance to hit with the story. But if you did play Final Fantasy VII and liked that story, then I think there's something for you to like with Advent.
I do agree. But we're going to move on from that to the remake duology. There are only 2 games currently, and they make up the combined first disc of Final Fantasy VII. It sounds weird.
Which is crazy.
It sounds weird, because Final Fantasy VII is a 3-disc game. How the hell do they have these 2? Where's the other 2 discs?
To be fair, disc 1 is only like half.
It's more than half. It's definitely more than half. The reason that the discs are used in that way is once you get into the later part of the game, they start using more FMVs. And since they use the video more frequently towards the later, like, third last quarter of the story, they obviously need to use a lot more of that space for the video, which in the first disc, there's not as much of that. So they can put more of the game, more of the story into that singular disc. But there are like 2 main elements to that first disc, which is the first, I would say maybe 10 hours of the game you spend in the city of Midgar, this dilapidated this huge dystopian kind of sort of hellscape. Your characters live in the slums. There's this upper plate and everything. It's run by this greedy corporation. You're a bunch of eco-terrorists. So the Final Fantasy VII remake, it's not a full remake, folks. It's only the Midgar section, much more fleshed out. There's some people who don't like certain elements of it. They obviously add in some new characters, new little side plots a little bit along the way. But I think on the whole, it's a very rich experience that really fleshes out that portion of the game.
It is quite linear as well. Like, it's very point A to point B. Because you never go into like the big open world map area, there just isn't that exists in the first remake game. So I think some people had problems with that. I was not one of them.
I loved every bit
I like
of
the
it.
Pacing, generally speaking, except, I do agree with people where they're like, this game has a lot of padding of like things that don't matter, which is fair. But to your point of like, it does help flesh out the world. It's kind of like, I don't know. Do you want more of that? If the answer is yes, you will probably like this.
Like my one example there is when they go to, so like you have your main cast in this eco-terrorist group, Avalanche, and it's you, Cloud, the leader, Barrett, your best childhood friend, Tifa, and then 3 side characters who don't really play a major part in the story in the original version. Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse.
Jesse gets like whole backstory.
Jesse's got a huge backstory in this game. And you go and basically meet up with her parents in the upper plate, and then use that moment as a like an excuse to kind of sneak into this Shinra being the major corporation here, sneak into like one of their bases to steal some like explosives and stuff like that. And that's not a bad moment, I think. I think that really kind of flushes that out a little more and kind of explains what they do and how they get there, which also adds some emotional weight to a really key story element towards the end.
Yeah, it gets very somber, which I appreciate as well.
And when you play it in 7, when you play that scene in 7, it's a bit of a jaw dropper, but it happens very quickly. It's very kind of like it's over and it's done. You go to go do it, and then it just kind of happens. It's very quick. It's very brief, and you do feel something from it. But this in Remake, it really emphasizes it, really drives it home, and it lets you kind of sit in it. It lets you really experience it. It lets you feel the weight and the gravity of that situation a lot more. And that's what I think it does a lot more strongly. It gives you the time to sit with those moments and really gives them a lot more gravity and a lot more weight and makes for a far richer experience. That said, some of the padding also comes with, again, slight spoilers, some potential alternate timeline potential nonsense going on. Very weirdness.
It's very difficult to recommend this. I noticed that you did not put this on. This is a good starting point because I know a lot of people are like, oh, Final Fantasy VII is one of the most beloved Final Fantasy games. Here is a new remake with a lot of modern day like touch-ups. Why should I not start with that? And like you said, reason being is, well, it's not exactly a remake. They change the story. So you kind of have to be familiar with the source material in order to understand the weight of those changes.
Right. And most of the story is still the same. Like for the most part, it is still pretty one-to-one. But it kind of plays it as you're trying to, fate is trying to intervene and change things. And so it feels a little weird. It's very, if you've played Kingdom Hearts, Tetsuya Nomura, who is the director for Kingdom Hearts, was also the director for these. You can kind of see the Nomura touches in there a little bit. But the majority of that, again, the game is still, like, core story elements are still by and large the same. And it only has a real difference towards, like, the very, very, very end of the game. And when it does, that's where you kind of really asks you to kind of know a little bit about the Crisis Core storyline and understand a little bit more of that.
Man, that's so weird because I never really thought of that because I played Crisis Core first, but not only does it mean, hey, you should play Final Fantasy VII, the original game, but you should also play Crisis Core. And then once you've done that, now you can actually understand what's going on in Final Fantasy VII Remake and its follow-up Rebirth. As you can maybe tell on the front here, there's a certain character here, this guy right here, Zach. Zach Fair, my boy.
He's like, again, it's like you said earlier, if you were to play like Crisis Core and then you go back and play the original 7, you're like, who the hell is Zach? Where the hell is Zach? When is this guy going to show up? And he just like doesn't until like you're like 30 hours into this 40-hour game.
There's a missable cutscene with him that explains a lot of what happens in Crisis Core. And I'm like, why is this a missable cutscene?
But even then, some of those scenes, you have to like actually go out of your way to find them. If you're just kind of going through the game straight through, you won't know that these even exist. Oh, I wouldn't have even known if I didn't like play the game along with like a strategy guide, which tells you, hey, go out of your way, go to this place, and you'll see this cool cutscene that explains a lot of things about what happened to Zach. And here, Zach is like a central character almost, because it plays a lot more into the alternate story for Rebirth, which is why Crisis Core the remake there for Crisis Core came out right before Rebirth. It was meant to lead into it and tie into it and give you a better understanding of who Zach is as a character. That having been said, alternate timeline nonsense aside, the rest of it is very faithful. Some minor exceptions later on. A lovely little character named Sid Highwind his role is a little different in this one compared to other games in the series, or like the other 7, the original 7. You meet him in this town called Rocket Town. In this one, you meet him earlier on before Rocket Town, where you just kind of, he helps as your like travel guide essentially from place to place. But 7 Rebirth is actually an open world game, and it is awesome. I loved Remake Rebirth just left my jaw on the floor and it never left. It was just top to bottom, awesome game. I love this game. I have not 100%ed it, but even just a casual playthrough took me like 80 hours to get through. It is a long game. It's a deep game. It's great. But again, I wouldn't recommend it to somebody who's new. This is, you play 7 first, then you play Remake, maybe you play Crisis Core if you really want to have the nuances of the story more.
If not, at the very least, just look up a synopsis of Crisis Core.
but Rebirth itself, once you have that experience and that know-how and the background for everything, Rebirth is incredible. I love this game.
And I think that's kind of like what warns a lot of people away from the Final Fantasy series, is because it feels like there's so many things that so many steps they have to take in order to make the journey fulfilling. And that's not true with every Final Fantasy game. And if you were to say start with Remake and then just play Rebirth, I don't actually think that that's as bad of an option as people are constantly making it out to be. Especially like you have been saying over and over that the games are good. I do agree with you. Like, I think the games are good. You just have to go in knowing you're probably going to be missing a few things. And as long as you're okay with that and are willing to just roll with the punches or go fill in the pieces that you're missing online, I do think that these are still excellent experiences.
I wholeheartedly agree. I think these are great games. And like you said, if you're willing to kind of put up with, maybe you don't know a few things, they're still fantastic experiences. I cannot recommend Remake and Rebirth highly enough. The third game, because what the third game is, it's just going to continue. It's these contain like the first disc, but again, the first disc in the actual original Final Fantasy VII is like actually like the first like 3/4 of the game, and those last 2 discs are the last like quarter of it. So they're doing it right, honestly. And when that third game comes out, I'm positive, I'd be shocked if they don't stick the landing. They're doing such a phenomenal job so far that these are 2 of my favorite games in the last, like, since the pandemic years, easily. I love these games.
Yeah. I think you've done a great job of covering like the series as a whole. And obviously, like for the newer games, it's very easy in order to play them. But one of my final questions for you is, like, what is the best way to play, especially some of the older ones? Like, I think anything from like PS2 or earlier on, it is very quite likely, heck, even like the Xbox 360 and PS3, like Final Fantasy 13. So you do want to play that, right? Like, what options do you have for playing these older games on potentially modern consoles if you're getting into it? Or are there some where you're like, I think it's worth it to play this on original hardware?
So, I will say Final Fantasy 13, a little hard to play that on anything but original hardware. The exception is it does have a PC release. I don't know quite how good that version is, but I know it exists. You can buy it on Steam.
It does have a 360 release, which is backwards compatible on the Xbox Series.
I always forget about that.
So that's probably the best way to do it. But again, that kind of precludes that you have an Xbox Series, whereas I know a lot of people just have a PS5 instead. So
it's also much more of a pain in the ass because the thing about, and I wish I had it because my local shop always has a 360 copy of 13, and I always look at it and I'm like, maybe, nah, I don't need it. So I can't like visually show this, but I have again, these games are just everywhere now. I have lost control of my life.
I bought Final Fantasy games, never looked back.
But Final Fantasy 13 for the PS3. As I'm destroying these games, it's a 1-disc game. Your 360 version is a 3-disc game. The reason for that is because PS3 was the first system to use Blu-ray, and the 360 games are all still using DVDs. And since they're using DVDs, it has less storage space.
Way too big.
So they need to spread it out across multiple discs. I actually have never played the 360 version. Again, I really didn't like this one. I bought this game day of release, and this is actually a copy I bought later. Again, I definitely sold that first one the first time because I hated this game. But it obviously never made me want to actually own a copy for the 360. So I'm not sure how it works.
You have to swap discs between, but if you do it on an Xbox Series, the way that those work is it basically just uses the disc as it doesn't actually rip the data from it. It needs an internet connection. So you put that in and it's like, oh, you own the game? Great, I'll download it for you. So you only use it as basically a boot disc. You just download the game. The Xbox Series version also, because the 360 version has more compressed FMVs, again, because of the storage limitations of it. But the Series versions goes back and uses less compressed versions of it in the data that it downloads to you. So okay, see, I would say that's the best way to do it.
I'm learning some new things too here.
Exactly. I'm an Xbox connoisseur.
Yeah, Final Fantasy 13, that's a bit of a headache. The other one is 11. If you really, first off, I don't recommend 11 to a new person at all. It is a very old school MMO. I don't know if either you two know this. It predates World of Warcraft by about a year or two.
Ooh.
So
a classic.
So a lot of the advancements that WoW pioneered are not present in this game. And there are a lot of like old school, like your macros. It's not just, move a hotkey onto your taskbar. No. You have to type out commands into your macros and stuff like that.
Oh no.
It is a little rough. It doesn't really direct you when you accept a quest anywhere. It doesn't tell you, go here, do this. It's a very dense game. But I think it's good if you're willing to put in the time, use a wiki, use a guide, look up a new player guide. It's a fun game. I do like it. I do recommend it. It's only for like diehards though. I just happen to be at the right time and place. I've been playing it pretty much almost since the day it came out. And that was like when I was peak Final Fantasy fan. So, right time and place. I still play that game to this day. I use private servers actually for some of it, unless there's a free login campaign. But all of the other ones, you can get them on modern consoles. Pretty much every single game. Every one of them. It is wild just how accessible this series is on modern consoles. Again, apart from 11 and 13, you can, if you have a PS4 or 5 or an Xbox Series S, Series X, Xbox One, and even a Switch. I think aside from maybe 14, that's a slight exception on some of those. Every single Final Fantasy game is accessible to you. You have access both physical and digital for most of them. It gets a little weird when you get into the PS1 era. But I think Final Fantasy 14 is accessible on PS4 and PS5. Might be on 360, or I'm sorry, not 360, not 360. Series, or if it's not, then they're trying to make it work, and they're now saying it might be potentially coming to Switch 2 eventually as well. There's talks going on, but everything else you could play on modern consoles.
So to say, it is very interesting to me, very specifically, that like 1 through 6 are so accessible specifically on the Switch. Yes, that's what you were grabbing.
So
Pixel remasters. You can buy this entire collection. The usual MSRP is like $70, which seems high for some old games, but I'm telling you, you're going to get your bang for your buck out of this. Each of these games are at least 20 hours, and like once you get into 6, you're playing that game for like 40 plus hours. You're going to get like 100 plus play time out of this. You're going to get several rich experiences. The modern quality of life is so good. And if you don't really want this, I mean, this is a retro collecting podcast in part, right? So we want to talk the physical ones up a little bit. But if you really want like just a quick digital version of it, you can buy each game individually. So, okay, I'm saying that 3, awful game. I do not like it. I do not recommend it. A lot of other people will say the same about 2. They don't recommend 2. Don't play 2. I like it. I'm a 2 apologist, but a lot of people will say just skip them. Okay, well then you can buy 1, 4, 5, and 6 individually. It'll be cheaper than this.
But if you also just keep watching deals and stuff like this, I do see this game go on sale pretty, a modest amount, as do most Square games. So you can usually get these pretty reasonably. They're very accessible, and they are the best ways to play these games. Bar none. Don't care what anybody says. They are the best ways to play these games. And I say that as somebody who loves going back and playing some of them in the older ways. I think it's the most accessible. Frankly, it's also kind of the cheapest. But there are some other cheap ways to play these older games. Like, I'll use this as an example. Final Fantasy Anthology. This is 5 and 6 on the PlayStation. So, fun fact, you can still buy many of the PS1 era Final Fantasies brand new. These two didn't know about this until I told them earlier today.
It's true. You were telling us up until I think it was about 2 years ago, you could literally just go on Square's website and buy PS1 games brand new in box with the shrink wrap. It's like, are you kidding me? Really?
This is not a Final Fantasy game, but I do have an example of a brand new sealed copy that I bought off of Amazon a few years ago, and you can still see it's sealed. It doesn't have the typical PS1 top label for a sealed game, but that's all. The represses all look like that. They don't have that top on them, but they do look like that. They also have some weird.
Hey, brand new Chrono Cross is brand new.
Yeah, brand new Chrono Cross, which but they have an interesting quirk to them. So obviously this is a collecting podcast. If you're listening to this, you probably are aware of this little tidbit. But this is my greatest hits copy of 9. And if I take out the disc, well, you can see it right here. It's got a black bottom to it.
As the case with every single PS1 game.
Every PS1 game, yeah.
Makes sense.
However, here's another one of those anthologies. If I can pull it out. Where the hell did I put it? It's right here. Final Fantasy Chronicles. This has Final Fantasy IV and the GOAT, the greatest. I love this game to death. It is, if I can pull this one out, because I can't pull it out anywhere, it's freaking Chrono Trigger.
Ooh, is that Chrono Trigger in box?
Oh yeah, it is.
In your hand now?
This is my holy grail. I love this game. It is the greatest game of all time. If you, it's not exactly Final Fantasy, but it's Final Fantasy tangential enough. If you could play Chrono Trigger, play Chrono Trigger. That's my moment. I'm done. That's my soapbox. Anyway, Final Fantasy Chronicles has Final Fantasy IV and Chrono Trigger. So this is actually also the cheapest way to play Chrono Trigger by a lot.
Big time.
It is kind of the worst version. The PS1 games all have kind of rough load times. But I bought this game for $20. It's brand new. It works. And guess what? It's got a little quirk to these discs, because this is one of those newer represses. Well, it looks a little different here.
It's not black.
Where's that black lining?
It's silver.
It's not black at all.
And the bottom, also silver.
So it's.
Wait a second. This just looks like a normal CD,
right? But this is a lot of modern represses for these Square Enix games look like this. It's really weird, but they are legit. They do play, and you can still buy them pretty new. I shot Cal and Murph links for, I believe it was 9 and the PS2 version of 10-2. You can buy a brand new copy of Final Fantasy 9 for $25. Or
I'm on the case. I'm on the case
year
right
of our
now.
Lord 2025.
And Final Fantasy 10-2
game.
Greatest Hits for $10. It's kind of ridiculous. So
crazy. Yeah, the fact that Square does this is insane. I bought Kingdom Hearts brand new a few years ago for $10 for much the same reason of they just kept making them.
Yeah, and so you can find many of these games for dirt cheap. If you have a PlayStation Network account and are willing to put some funds into it, and you have a PS3, then you can go and download these games digitally. And not only use them on your PS3, but that you can play them on your Vita and your PSP.
That's how I've been doing some things. I've been playing Final Fantasy VII on my PSP for that. And I know you said that load times were a little bit rough on the PS1. They're still not perfect, obviously, on the PSP, but they are better because it doesn't have to like physically read from a laser.
And you can also go into the options for your in the PSP versions and actually speed up the loading.
Yep, the disk access or whatever it is, yeah.
So it makes it go a little bit faster, but even then, I don't think it's too noticeable. If it's like the first time you're playing that game, you probably don't even think very much of it. It's only when you go back and play like the DS version or the original SNES copy or something, and you go, oh yeah, these load times are should be a lot faster. And when I say load times, the only spots where that's really a problem is when you're menuing.
Yep.
And
it's battle transitions and menus.
Yeah.
Is what I've noticed.
And even then, the battle transitions are just a super brief lag. It just it's not that egregious.
Yeah, they're still definitely playable. I would agree with you there.
And you still get a great experience. It's well worth it. Are they the best way to play it? No, I still think the pixel remasters are better because you can do things like fast forward. Are you having trouble with a certain point? You can turn off encounters. I've done that a few times when I'm trying to figure out a puzzle.
I'm just trying to get somewhere, please.
There's some areas in 4 where you need to use float magic to float over lava and stuff like that. But it's not intuitive. It doesn't tell you to do that. So I was very confused. Why the hell am I taking so much damage just trying to get through this dungeon? And it didn't make a lot of sense to me. So until I figured that out, it was okay, hang on. I'm really struggling with this point. Let me just turn off the encounters and just get through where I need to get through. You can also turn on God mode. That just gives you full power-ups and stuff like that. If you just want to experience the story without having to deal with all the trivialities of the leveling and stuff like that, then that's a thing you can do.
They also cleaned up the translations, correct?
Correct.
Because they're a little all over the place from the old games.
And they also had a lot of censorship in the originals.
Good old NOA,
correct.
Nintendo of America from the 90s
now,
and 80s.
I will say that the PS1 versions cleaned that up a little bit, but they still largely use the original translations. Good old Ted Woolsey. I will say some of the old Woolseyisms, as they're called, are sorely missed in the later versions. You no longer have Kefka shouting out "son of a submariner" anymore.
No, but that's Pete. That's Pete.
Which is my favorite line, and he no longer says that. However, they did do things they left in the Spoony Bard reference in 4. Some real classic moments. So that's another thing you get. When you switch between versions, you do lose a little bit of something by going to those newer versions. But I think the experience overall is better. Especially with the pixel remasters, they add in some things. There are new visual effects that were not possible with those earlier versions of the game. Thinking in I want to say 5. There's these points where this big explosion happens. Kind of looks like Akira, where it's just the big orb expanding and it devours this whole world, this whole land, and then it recedes in the city or whatever is just gone. But it looks so much nicer because it looks more like an actual growing sphere and everything. You can tell it's more CG-esque, where before it was more just sprite based. So it has this cooler visual look to it, and they do it in a way that it does stand out a little bit. But it also looks seamless. They're not, the pixel remasters are more closer to what you were saying with Crisis Core. They're not really remasters. They are full-blown remakes that utilize a lot of those original assets. And so I think they're really good. 7, 8, and 9, same kind of thing. They upscale some of the graphics a little bit. 8, the characters actually look like human beings in that one. If you've ever seen the meme images of 8's characters, they don't look very good, but you can actually make out actual definition in the remaster for those characters. But But it's then when you get into like 10 and 12, we also start getting some bonus content. Some things a little different. Because I don't know if you fine folks out there may know this. 10 and 12 had special international versions that changed things. This is also the case for Kingdom Hearts. This is why when you play the newer versions of like Kingdom Hearts, it's Kingdom Hearts 1 Final Mix and Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix.
We talked about this on a previous episode, right, Cal?
Yes, we did.
Where it adds more content to the, like you have new boss fights, new, I believe in Kingdom Hearts you had like new gummy ship stuff. In 10, there are a ton of extra boss fights, a revamped sphere grid, and a few other things like that. In 12, they your main leveling system in that is this thing called the license board, where you get license points and it opens up a slot on your license board, which gives you access to things like new magic, new armor sets, things like that. The problem is, in the original version of 12, all characters have the same license board, so they all kind of turn into the same characters by the end game.
Well, it is interesting that like stuff like 1.5 and 2.5 did at least come to the United States eventually.
Right, and that's the same thing here.
We have it now,
like,
but
the international version of 10 that had like the dark aeons and stuff like that. So it was really cool to actually like get access to those in the later remasters. You have those in Final Fantasy 10 and 10-2 remastered, but you don't get them in the original PS2 version. So things like that are worth considering if you're looking for different versions. I will say that I think in 10 specifically, some of those secret endgame bosses, the Dark Aeons, come at you out of nowhere when you're just trying to get through to certain points that you like. You're trying to go backtrack and hit certain things that you missed the first time around. You'll try and go get like the specific item that you missed, and all of a sudden there's a Dark Aeon upon you, and they just kill you. And if you didn't save, then you just lost several hours of gameplay. So there's trade-offs.
It's a little give and take.
Even though it's more gameplay, there's a little bit of whatever. And then in 12, what they do is they revamp the whole license system to being closer to like a job system, that's like a class system. You choose a main class and a subclass, and it bases and the way your license board develops is based on the classes that you select, which gives more diversity to your party. So there's a lot more interesting, unique aspects to that. And also, they revamp some of the boss fights and things like that. One of the bosses, one of the secret super bosses in 12, when I played it on the PS2 version, no problem. Kill that thing easy. It's dead. I went to go try and do that in the HD remaster of the Zodiac Age. That thing just wiped the floor with me and murdered me. Very distinctly different. But I still think it's a great experience. Again, many of these you can buy physically. Again, it's a little weird with 7, 8, and 9, but there are Asian and PAL exclusive versions physically for your Switch. And since the Switch is region free, they will work on your Switch just fine. So if that's a way you want to experience those games, hey, that's a great way to have them physically. Otherwise, a little harder, but I think it's worth experiencing them one way or another.
Yeah, if you want them physically, I think the next most modern way you can do it is literally just buy a PS1 copy and stick it in a PlayStation 3. And that's about the best you got, because turns out every single PS3 will play PS1 games, regardless of when it came out. Paige, I have another question for you. Is Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles a good game? Cal has not played it. Cal does not own it.
Yes, I have.
Oh, that's right. You played it once with me. He doesn't own it.
I also have not played it.
Okay, we all have to figure out
for that
to get in the same
because
place.
it was a weirdo game, It's a multiplayer game, whereas most of these other ones are single player. So it's a very weird experience. Not only that, though, with the original GameCube version, you didn't use traditional controllers. You used your Game Boy Advance.
Well, thankfully, we know people that have Game Boy Advances and the GameCube to Game Boy Advance link cables.
Boy, if only there was a certain GameCube collector among us. If only.
I gotta dig up my one advanced cable. I only have one somehow.
Oh, I have 4. I've gotten 4 Swords Adventures games going before, and that is an excellent time. Highly recommend. But I know that we tried a little bit of Crystal Chronicles, Cal, and we were having a bit of a hard time with it. But I do want to try to give that another go at some point.
Yep. We were so confused by that game, actually.
Yeah. We were just like, how do we
I think we were just doing something deeply wrong.
Definitely.
I think there may be one other little thing we need to talk about briefly. Collectability. That is a good point. So this is just one little thing.
All about collectors.
I'm just gonna say this right now. So obviously these are 2 collector's editions for Remake and Rebirth. It's really funny. I actually have 2 copies of Remake because I bought this one after. And if I can open this up, there's another copy of Remake in here. It is sealed. It's really funny. I got this later down the line. It was listed as a used copy. Everything in here is sealed, untouched, clean. Love it.
Sure. We take those.
The thing is, Final Fantasy games, there's not really a lot to collect. These 2 are 2 of the collector's edition. Actually, these are the deluxe editions. There's higher collector editions beyond these 2. But they are basically just your standard collector's editions. Rebirth is a little more expensive. I think it's like $100. But Remake is like $40. It's pretty cheap. And I'm sure that the Rebirth one probably goes down eventually at some point too, once people have gotten their fill of it. I don't know. But there's only like a couple odd collector's editions out there. The reality is, unless you're going for something like this old bad boy here, some of these old
completed box cartridge.
Yeah, some of
like
the
Final Fantasy
old
3 too.
Some of these old cardboard box ones that are a little pricier. This game I think is something in the range of like $250, $300 depending. Most of them, they're pretty cheap. I mean, like I was just saying, you can buy these PS1 games for $20 brand new. You can buy PS2 games $10, maybe $20 for some of the better ones. Brand new. They are cheap. It's not really a super high-end collectible series. There are a few oddballs. The Pixel Remasters had an extremely super duper ultra limited supply version when it first came out. That was stupid. I don't know why they did it for that. You know, it was like a 1 hour window and it ran out and they never restocked it. It was really dumb. And that game, like that collector's edition is like $500 something or something. Like it's stupid expensive. Don't pay that price. Just pay like the $70 and buy this and be happy with it. It's a great time. Highly recommend it. But yeah, there's not really a lot to collect, honestly. It's a pretty cheap series. You could probably get like the entire thing if you do it right. For you could buy all 16 mainline games for probably, I don't know, maybe in the range of like $200 for the entire series. And that's pretty nuts.
And I'm sure it has a lot to do with what we've talked about on the show before. We've seen time of again, even in like the last year or so, if a really sought after, fairly expensive original game, which is usually, expensive for a mix of like, there's not that many copies of it out there compared to demand, blah, 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 blah. When the remake, remaster, direct port, whatever comes out, the prices of those original games go down. And like we were you were already talking about earlier on the show, there's so many versions of these games that exist in remake and remasters and direct ports. And every single game ever has been available on a digital store everywhere, and they're all on Steam. And, you know, I have to imagine that short of exactly like the really old games in their very decrepit cardboard boxes, nothing here is going to be pricey. There's no reason for it to be.
And like, to your point, here's a good example of this in action. Okay. I do not own the original NES version, but you can play Final Fantasy 1 on the PS1 Origins game. You can play it on the Game Boy Advance Dawn of Souls collection. You can play it, the PSP remake of it here. There's also for you Japanese playing fans out there, there's also a Wonder Swan version of Final Fantasy 1. And
Sure.
then they re-released it later as these pixel remasters. So there are like 5 or 6 different ways, and they are like tangibly different games. I believe in the Dawn of Souls one, because it was an exclusive on the Game Boy Advance, you can there's actually like references to like Link in this.
That's kind of neat.
Yeah, it's kind of like there's a grave site that is like the grave is like Link. I think that's actually a thing that shows up.
How depressing.
Yeah. But there's little nods to that stuff. I do think that was actually a thing that was in other versions of the game too. It's kind of weird. But it's really funny that you see that sort of thing. There are a few oddball exclusives. Again, I think we were talking about Sid earlier. Dawn of Souls is where they retroactively added Sid in. But then I believe, I could be wrong on this again, but I believe if you play the Pixel Remaster version, I'm not sure that they still have that addition in, or if they trimmed it out to get it back closer to the original story. So there's little minor differences, little oddballs. But yeah, you can, like, again, the PS1 game here. I bought this recently. I took off a tag, but I got this for like $18 used. And for a black label too. The Dawn of Souls game, this is like a complete copy. I think it's like $50, $40-50. You could buy a loose cart for probably like 15. Same with like this PSP copy. Hey, I got the price on it still. I bought it for $25 recently. And that's a PSP game. So like, and the Pixel Remaster one, if you buy that digitally on its own, it's $10. It might not even be that much. It might be like $8. So these games are all really cheap. They're very accessible. You can get them however you want. And especially because it's Square, they're always going on sale too. Because Square Enix just puts their games on sale all the time.
So what I'm hearing is there's just no excuse for people to not get into Final Fantasy because it is so cheap and it is so accessible. Like, why would you not?
Agree.
Hard agree from Paige. All right. I think that's about where we're going to end it here. We've been going for, holy cow, about 2 hours so far.
We got a lot to say. I mean, this is a pretty deep series, so there's a lot of
it
ground
really
to cover.
is. I know, and I'm sure there's things that we left on the table as well.
Oh, you mean like
but
this FF7 demo disc that I just happen to have? Yeah, little weirdos like this.
Man, thank you, Paige, for coming on and sharing your knowledge and your love of the Final Fantasy series, because this is something where me and Cal were like, we should talk about Final Fantasy, but we're both like, I don't think we're fully qualified to do it. Like, we both dabble.
Especially not me.
We both like aspects of it, but definitely not the full-on diehard fan that you are,
and
Paige, so.
Especially since we went, when I say I went deep talking about the lore, folks, I went deep with my lore discussions.
There's so much to these, yeah. That is so true.
Well, especially because, again, we're a bunch of Magic fans here. So like the non-final, they did 4 Magic pre-constructed decks for Final Fantasy, for Final Fantasy 6, Final Fantasy 7, Final Fantasy 10, and Final Fantasy 14. There you go.
I am currently holding the one for Final Fantasy X in my hand. It is unopened. I bought it from Costco and forgot to open it. Whoopsies.
So, not including the 14 one, because obviously the 14 is this huge sweeping MMO, so there's obviously unique story things all over the place, and weird side quests. When you open up the ones for 6, 7, and 10, you can actually line up the cards in such a way that you can actually line up the whole story of the games.
Which is so cool.
And so what I would do for these articles is I just lined up all the cards in their story order and broke down the story for people who had never touched these games but wanted to understand what these cards were trying to say. And so, I went pretty deep on it. I love these games. Big fan.
Yeah, so definitely, if you like Magic, which hopefully you do, because otherwise, I was going to say, why are you here? But ideally, because you like video games, but it is likely that you like Magic as well. Go check out Paige's articles. They are very, very cool, very good read.
Over at coolstuffinc.com.
Perfect. Let's go ahead and go on to our one recurrent segment of the show, which is recent pickups. Me and Cal didn't really have anything. Paige,
I'd say I've got absolutely
I actually
nothing,
have a few
so
things that
it's
I
up to
picked up in
Paige.
about the last week or so.
we made you talk the whole time. Let's make you talk some more.
But I've actually got some really fun ones. My local shop, where I go play Magic the Gathering at, also is a video game shop, a retro game shop. So I get to just play tournaments, win store credit, and then I use that store credit to buy sweet video games. So I do that a lot, and I pick up some cool ones. And we're going to keep this PlayStation RPG train going because, what's this? A Final Fantasy game. Yeah, I picked up this one. This is Final Fantasy Type O HD, and I love. I've been wanting to play this game for a long time. It got great reviews, and I've been hearing nothing but great things about it. It's part of. They did this thing called the Final Fantasy Chrysalis Novus project, or whatever the hell it was called.
Yeah, Nova Chrysalis or whatever. That was part of that. Final Fantasy 13 was.
Final Fantasy 13, Final Fantasy Type 0, and this game called Final Fantasy Versus 13, which turned into this little game called Final Fantasy 15.
Yep.
That was in development hell for years. But Type 0 has gotten great reviews. It was a Japanese exclusive on the PSP version, so this was the first time it came stateside. And you know what? Speaking of cheap games, this game was kind of more niche as far as Final Fantasy games go, and I was kind of expecting it to be kind of costly. I bought this game for $10.
Let's go.
Like,
Nice.
I was really surprised by this. It's pretty cheap. It's very affordable, and it's a good game by all accounts, from what I could tell. But I also bought 2 PS1 RPGs. I bought Wild Arms, this little Western-themed RPG. I believe this is from Sony themselves, who was behind this one. I could be wrong on that, but yeah. I've always heard great things about this. I've had digital copies of it for a while. Haven't actually gotten around to playing it, but I keep hearing awesome things. It's got great music. I do know that. I listen to the music for this game a lot, even though I've never actually played it. And it seems really cool. And I also bought Vandal Hearts, which is another PS1 RPG. Something really interesting about these games, they're both like thick 2-game kinda, or 2-disc kinda cases, right? These are both 1-disc games.
Because
Weird,
they
why?
need such humongous manuals, of
That's
course.
the reason. I
That's
didn't realize.
crazy.
I did not realize it until I pulled out the manual for Wild Arms. Look how thick that is.
That's
you
awesome.
can't. It is. I believe 70 pages or something. It is a really thick manual. So it's very interesting how they did that with this. I think Vandal Hearts is a Konami game. So it's also really funny. You open it up, and it's got Suikoden advertisements in it.
Yeah.
But those were a couple of my cool ones. And then I had one other thing that I picked up, which was not something I purchased. This was my aunt found out that I both was into a lot of these old video games, and I was trying to get some stuff for my siblings, getting them some presents. I was going to get them a couple of Game Boys. And she turns out that she had this DS with a whole bunch of shovelware-y kind of games. So I'm not going to show the games here, but I did get this DS with the box, and it is a pretty clean one. This is the breast cancer awareness DS, and it is nice and clean. The screen is like in pristine shape. There is like no scratches on that.
That is rare for DSs. Usually the bottom screen is like scratched to high heaven because of the stylus.
It's got the original Game Boy cover in there.
Also something that constantly gets lost.
Original stylus is in there too. It is super clean. Looks really nice. I was very surprised to get this. Most of the other games were very like, again, puzzle, very game show, your typical, probably like 40-year-old aunt in the 2000s type of, game. And there's a couple good stuff in there. There's a copy of Brain Age, Picross, Big Brain Academy, Clubhouse Games was in there too. There's a few goodies, but for the most part, the real highlight was this lovely little DS in the box. So that was a really cool thing. I wasn't expecting to get that, but nice little ad there. But that one my pickups in the last few weeks. I wish we could have done this when we were originally planning to do it, because that 1 week that I got that, I had some heat.
Sorry. It was mostly my fault because, as it turns out, right before Magic set releases, which is when we were trying to initially do this before the Final Fantasy set dropped, turns out that ends up being very, very busy for me.
And I ended up with that right before we were originally trying to do it. I picked up copies. I picked up a complete in box Super Mario 64, complete in box Rocket Knight Adventures. That was actually when I picked up my deluxe Final Fantasy VII remake. So a lot of really cool stuff that I picked up that week. But this stuff pretty good too. So
Rocket Knight Adventures, a true Sega Genesis fan over here. Oh
yeah, Rocket Knight Adventures. That is an awesome game. Please play that if you've never played it. That also just got re-released on modern consoles.
Let's go. Once again, no excuse for people to not play awesome games.
There's been a lot of good, I will say, there's a lot of really good retro classics that are getting re-released these days, and it is awesome. Another one that I was huge on last year that got a re-release was Tomba. Good old PS1 game. Do you two know of Tomba?
Yep. I know of Tomba 2 primarily. But
I grew up with Tomba. The first one, I played the demo nonstop. And it was only a demo. I never went much further than that. I think my cousin had a copy of it, and I maybe went a little further. But I mostly played the demo at demo kiosks when I was a kid, and I loved that game. So when it got a modern remaster, remake, whatever. I bought a physical copy of that all day.
Yeah, that is awesome.
But it's really great that we're seeing much more of those classic games getting revamped in the modern settings.
Heavy agree. Again, thank you, Paige, so much for coming in and sharing your love of Final Fantasy and just gaming in general. Really shows through. Basically, you showing up with, here, look at all these games that I have, and pulls them all off to the side.
This
very,
giant,
very awesome.
These giant stacks,
multiple, dropping them everywhere.
And this isn't even all of them, and they are falling on me.
Holy cow.
Hi.
So
Incredible.
As you're holding giant stacks of games, where can people find you? You said you have articles on Cool Stuff Inc. What else you got?
The one other place where I mostly hang out is TheMaverickGirl on Blue Sky. I don't know the exact handle there, but if you just type in TheMaverickGirl, you'll find me pretty easily. I also have YouTube and Twitch. I don't use them very much, but I do have them. If you feel like checking that out, you can do that, as the stuff is actually just falling all over me. But mostly I just write those articles and hang out on social media. I am talking a lot about Magic a lot of times, but if you follow me on Blue Sky and stuff like that, I am very heavily discussing video games a lot. I'm sharing stuff around, cool factoids, or even just showing off my own latest pickups, because I have my own little thing. Again, I pick them up when I'm doing... This is actually falling on me now. I'm like...
You can put it down.
I have this little hashtag on Blue Sky called Magic the Retro Gaming, which is when I go to a local shop, play Magic or help out the local shop with their Magic cards, and buy video games with the winnings, essentially. So it's my little crossover of, hey, I went and did well. Like, I would, couple examples. We have these higher profile tournaments called, like, RCQs and 1Ks, where you're earning, like, higher dollar amounts, where I've walked away with games like some of the PS2 .hack games. I walked away with a copy of Chameleon Twist 2. Zelda the Wind Waker, which I wish I had that on hand, Cal. Maybe I'll grab it after we're done and show you. But it's a not for resale copy.
Nice.
It's a really interesting variant. I couldn't even find a price on it.
Huh.
That's very fun.
So all kinds of cool oddities. I share this around online. And yeah, just little Jack or Jill of all trades. Let's talk about a little bit of everything. In terms of gaming, I love gaming. I love movies. I love... if you follow me, you're in for a good... like 5 Futurama memes every day. Hell, I sent one to these two while we were prepping for this whole thing.
So true.
But that's...
Yep. So if you follow Paige, good time.
Yep.
Yes, indeed.
All right. Once again, one final thank you for joining us, Paige.
Thank you for having me. This has been a lot of fun just talking about games. I don't get to do this very much. So I'm mostly sitting around talking about Magic. But hey, lately I've gotten to mix that a little bit. I've talked so much about Final Fantasy lately. I gotta say, it's been a delight. So it's a nice change of pace.
Gaming is the glue that holds us all together.
Love it.
And with that, thank you all for listening / watching. Happy gaming.
Happy gaming.
Bye-bye.